clearer in the past, we now need to it has to be spelled out a little bit more precisely. And then when it's precise, it's spelled out a little more precisely for us, and we understand what we need to do. And that's really the basis that led him to write this book. It's called Aleishur Sharei Hadracha. Like Hadracha is guidance, a book of guidance to help somebody in our generation as they enter the world of Torah. That's really the point of the book. I was just going to tell you one little thing about volume 2 of this book. When I bought this book, you could only buy the book from the home of Rabbi Wolbe. You had to go to him to buy the book. It wasn't available in the shops.
Be worthy to buy it?
No, you had to go to the book. You had to go to the shop. And when I came to buy volume 1, volume 2, this one was out of print. So I bought volume 1, and then about a month. It was not far from me in Givat Shaul. He lived very near you. Is where he lived. Anyway, like a 10-minute walk. Shalom Aleichem, how you doing? I don't know if anyone saw on the screen, but in the room just got much brighter. Did you notice?
I felt it.
I'm sure you did. I'm very excited for today's class.
Screen brightness.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it balances. That must be it. Anyway, so I bought volume 1. Then about a month later, volume 2 came out. The second printing of volume 2. And I hadn't finished reading volume 1. But when I heard it came out, I went to buy volume 2. Rabbi Wolbe said, "Have you finished volume 1? Is that amazing? I said, no. She said, then why do you want to buy volume 2? So I didn't. And then I came back and I finished volume 1, and then I bought volume 2. So we've looked at volume 1. We looked at one of the 4 sections in volume 1. We completed one of the 4 sections. The last of the 4 sections, the third, we did section 2. Section 3 is a very, very individual section about getting to know yourself. If anyone ever wants to learn that section, it's much better to learn b'chavrusa rather than learning in a class. And the 4th section is a fantastic preparation for marriage. Like to prepare you in the months leading up to marriage. And therefore, that's also not perfect to learn in this context. So we did a bit of number 1, bit of number 2. We missed out 3 and 4. And now we turn to the second volume. Now, in the second volume, he sort of created this idea of a Va'ad. A Va'ad was a group of people that want together to work on themselves. We call it in our class description here, a Musa workshop. Like, it's not just studying text, but it's a workshop in the hope that in our study, we'll work on ourselves a little bit. Now, he goes through different sections. I've chosen to go through the section of goes through the day. We're going to talk about each part of the day and the challenges that exist at that part of the day. And then over the course of the next week, during that part of the day, do you remember? We studied that together on Wednesday night. Just be aware of what he says about that part of the day. Is that clear? So today we're going to be talking about waking up in the morning. Okay? So for the next 7 days, starting tomorrow morning, during the minutes after we wake up in the morning, just be aware of what we're going to talk about today. And then next week we'll start by hearing how it was. Is that okay? It's much short. The sections are shorter, but it's very, very powerful. Okay. Yes. Was that no? Oh, were you asking a question?
No.
Okay. Oh, you're so holy. Okay, listen to this. So he says, B'chovot halavavot boneh et hashar avodat ha'elokim al hakarat hatov shehi ha'hoda'ah. Nitan lomar שהדתיות הטבעית שישנה בלב כל אדם בריא בנפשו היא הכוח של הודאה. Do you know what's interesting? Do you know what it says? That the thing to think about in the morning when you're waking up, I mean, there's so many ways you could, so many angles. Yeah, modeh ani. Do you know what modeh ani means? It's gratitude.
So did you sent the thing to Malti, right? Those
Yeah.
Pages. Did you Malti send that in there?
No, but miraculously, Asher,
I can send you a few.
Asher's got it here.
Oh, okay.
So we've got them here.
Okay. Is that what you're reading from or no?
No.
No, okay, that's not there.
No, I'm reading for the book. Then we're going to finish this section, then we're going to get to there. Sorry.
Is this separate?
This book is called Alei Shur. So he says the very first word we say in the morning is modeh. Modeh is gratitude. The truth is, I prepared this yesterday, so I thought about this morning. And it says, think about it. When you go to bed at night, I mean, assuming you sleep enough, when you go to sleep at night, you're exhausted. And then you wake up and you're fresh. It's just incredible. I can have like troubles, not only trouble, like I can be exhausted, worn out mentally, physically. I lie down and in the morning, I mean, something happened. The first thing I feel in the morning is gratitude. Isn't that inspiring? That's the first thing we say is modeh. Now he says there are two types of modeh. Modeh is to acknowledge and is also to say thank you. Lohodot means to thank you, but is also to acknowledge. Acknowledge that it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the first thing is to feel grateful. That's the first level of hoda'ah. But then the second level of hoda'ah is to understand to whom I need to express that gratitude. You hear that? I thought it was a really, really brilliant idea. I'm just going to continue read it. He says, "Ulai yirei shamayim amiti yuchal laharkish ma shekatav Rabbeinu Yonah betchilat Sefer Yirah." Bechol boker, every morning, bahakitzo mishnato, when you wake up in the morning, yizdazer v'yiyeh nitra v'nichpar me'emat haboreh b'zichro chazdo asher aseh lo ve'emunato asher shamar lo ki hichzir lo et nishmato asher hifkid etzlo v'az yivarech b'libo haboreh asher higdil lasot imo ki chidesh v'ichlif kocho. So, I mean, this takes it a little bit further. Not just gratitude, but also awe. The first level of gratitude, I was tired, now I'm awake. But then awe, it's not obvious, as our resident nurse can confer, it's not obvious that you're going to wake up in the morning. And to wake up in the morning is something that I need to, that's awesome. You know, I was not functioning, and now I'm functioning. The gratitude that I'm now functioning, it's not something that one should take for granted, but it's more than gratitude. The second level is awe. You hear that? Awe. Now, the trouble is, in American, when you say awe, awesome, so you think like about a burger. But here, it means awesome in the really awesome sense, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You understand? You've used up the word. Europeans, we kept it for things that really are awesome. And that's Yirah, the awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is something that penetrates me.
May I remind you, because of Brexit, you are no longer European.
Oh, Moshe Rabbeinu, you're so sweet. Thank you so much for saying this.
Let's just focus on the shiur, please.
Okay, but that's a very, very good point.
Excuse me, Rav, what is the translation of Alei Shur?
Oh, Alei Shur is actually based on a pasuk in last week's parasha. It is the blessing that God gave, that Yaakov gave to Yosef.
So it's not like Raz Beyond or Bully, it's something...
No. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, now he says, when I wake up in the morning and I contemplate these things, my gratitude, I was exhausted, and now I'm not exhausted, and I'm alive for another day. That awesome recognition. He says, I will start my day with a very clear, a passionate love for God in your heart. Va'az al yishkav al mitato ka'atzel ach b'mihirut v'zirizut yakum miyad. As soon as I say modeh ani lefanecha in the morning, I'm not going to fall back to sleep again. And then, as soon as I come to that awesome realization, I will get out of bed. You follow? So how do I get up in the morning? I get up in the morning by saying Modeh Ani Lefanecha. You follow? Because if I really say Modeh Ani Lefanecha and I appreciate this gift that I've, that I was tired and now I've restored, I woke up in the morning and I've been given another day, that awesome understanding is what gets me out of bed in the morning. I just want to add, I'm going to add one more point, Hirish, that I heard from my teacher, Rav Eliezer. The very, very beginning of the Shulchan Aruch. The beginning of the Shulchan Aruch, goes through the day. So it also starts, the very first halacha is about getting up in the morning, and he says, Hitgaber ka'ari, you shall wake up like a lion. Now, Rabbi Eliezer said, and I can confirm, if any of you have ever been to a zoo, I've hardly ever seen a lion awake. I mean, what's going on? I mean, if you want to talk about the animal, like that is not the animal to say, wake up like a lion. That is the only, I don't think I've ever seen a lion awake. I mean, on a video, but I never, odd, right? So he said, and that's what he felt, until he went to South Africa and he went to a safari and he saw the lion is like the king of the jungle. The lion is dignified. Like when the lion gets up, so everyone else looks up. He doesn't get up like this, like scratching along. Like when a lion gets up, he gets up with dignity. And he felt it gaber ka'ari means when you wake up in the morning, you wake up with dignity. And I think that links very nicely with what Rav Volby is saying over here about this experience of gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that it is so not obvious that I go to sleep exhausted and wake up refreshed. That gratitude and the fact that I've been given another day, that is really a wonderful feeling. And I express that with Modeh Ani Lefanecha. Okay, that is the end of Alei. I'm just going to add one tiny piece to conclude, and then I'm very excited to hear Hirsch's question. I would humbly like to suggest, people, during the course of the next week, we will all take a little extra second to say Modeh Ani Lefanecha when we get up in the morning. Is that okay? That was going to be our little... he writes here each week what the suggestions would be. We're going to be a little bit more aware.
He has weekly suggestions.
He does, because each week is a different paragraph. Next week is longer than this week, but we'll get there. The suggestion is when we wake up, we are going to be slightly more aware when we say Modeh Ani Lefanecha. Joy? Okay, now questions. Hirsch.
So, before one goes to sleep, before Jew goes to sleep, he says Shema, and before he wakes up in the morning, he says Modeh Ani. If I were to
After
say
he wakes up, not before he wakes up.
yeah, that's meant to brain part.
Right.
After he wakes up, sorry.
Easier that way.
If I take a nap, right? Do I say the Shema?
Oh, what an excellent question.
Yeah.
What an excellent question. No.
So I don't have to say the Shema before the nap, but I don't have to say Modeh Ani after?
Get to.
What?
No, I don't have to say Shema. I don't get to say Shema.
Oh.
Oh.
He's good.
But what if I die in my sleep during the nap?
Hirsch,
Just in case, that's why we say
Hirsch, that's not helpful. No, that...
Have to is a duty. I have to do this.
If anything,
But I get
before
to
you
do
do a
this.
nap, do tshuva then.
I like that.
You think you're gonna die, take
Yes,
a nap,
Hirsch.
do
I was
tshuva.
raised, you must do. You have responsibilities, do.
There are certain things you do for a nap.
Something good, and I
You
get
should
to
be.
do it.
I was reading
I
in
get to do it.
I was reading in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. You should be like waking up with vigor and excitement to serve Hashem,
Yes.
and you should be eager to wake up so that you can continue
guy
a day
is
full of mitzvahs
You're
and Torah.
such a superstar, this guy.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, yes, your question's been asked. There are certain things you don't. You do if you wake up, if you slept for about 40 minutes. You do Netilat Yadayim when you wake up. Irrespective of how long you slept, but you only say Shema before you go to bed at night, because that's what we know when you lie down at night. Okay.
And just as a refresher, the reason they say Shema right before you go to sleep is just in case if you die. And that's the thing a Jew is supposed to say right before he dies. He's supposed to recite the Kirat Shema.
Correct.
So if just in case if you die in your sleep, that's why you say it, right?
It's also because we're told to say the Shema when we get up and when we go to sleep. But we say it in Ma'ariv as well, that's true.
So can you explain? We're supposed to say when we wake up after the Moderni?
No. You say it during the prayers in Shacharit.
Yeah, but
Because
nighttime Shema is very different than the Mariv Shema.
the Kriyat, the prayer around the Shema at night.
Yeah.
That's true. But it's also part of this same. The truth. When we get there, we'll speak about Kriyat Shema in a little bit more detail, and I imagine that will be our little thing to emphasize at that time. In general, even the Moderni Kriyat Shema, what they all have, even let's say the bracha after going to the restroom, Asher Yatzar, is understanding that every aspect of our lives is an opportunity. It's not obvious, and it is an opportunity to express our gratitude. So I want to raise. There's quite a nice phrase that I like of God consciousness, and I raise my God consciousness through Kriyat Shema before I go to bed, Asher Yatzar after I've been to the restroom, Modeh Ani when I wake up in the mornings. I'm sort of taking these various, prakim during the day and injecting God consciousness throughout the day. Does that make sense?
So how much are you supposed to say? Because what I do is I do the Shema all the way to the and then I just go to sleep. How much am I supposed to say? I just say the phrase. And how much?
Wait.
There is you look at it in the Siddur. We won't talk about that now, if that's okay. I'll talk about it afterwards. No. Well, look in the Siddur. I'll show you later. Bezrat Hashem. There's in the Siddur. Different people have different orders of when you say. Do you say Shema? Do you say the bracha at the beginning? There's a bracha that you recite as part of the Kriyat Shema. Do you say at the beginning or do you say at the end? There's some people that fall asleep very quickly. Sort of head hits pillow, just can't last out for those couple of minutes. So then, for them, it's probably a better idea to say the majority of Kriyat Shema before they're actually lying down in bed. Because if, when you're lying down in bed, the clock is ticking, and you're a person that's like that, so then you should say most of it, even, like sitting up in bed, and then lie down.
Hirsch, if you look in your Siddur, it's probably just after Mariv for weekdays. It will probably say what you need to do.
It's all in there.
Yeah. That's what
I know there's a place that says pray for retiring to bed, but it's so long.
There you go. That's it.
That's it, bro.
That's it.
When I was in Bedouin, I tried to read it, but it was so long. I was like, okay, I'll just read it straight enough.
So when things are long, don't do. It's better to do less.
I like the title of the story. Do we have enough for everybody?
That'll be a miracle if we don't. That'll be so impressive. Because if we've got more people than she's, it means we have surpassed Rav Lisman's expectations. And that is always, and he has very high expectations. Oh wow, he's a prophet. He must be, that is exactly the right number. What greater proof do you need for the existence of God? Okay, sweet, wonderful people. We're now going to turn on to our topic for today. As you can see, there are 4 pages. The first 2 pages are just like to whet your appetite onto the topic. And then the second 2 pages are looking at Jewish sources on the issue of telling the truth. Now, the telling the truth is relevant in the context of a hospital. To what extent should a doctor tell the truth to a patient? But since not all of us are healthcare professionals, like Yaakov over here, some of us are just lay people, riffraff. Sorry about that.
Don't be sorry.
I hope. Anyway, the discussion is relevant, I think, in general, for us to have a clearer understanding of, when is truth essential. You know, if everybody was truthful to everyone else all of the time,
Some people get the feelings hurt.
that would be a disaster. Sometimes you have to say, ha ha ha, lovely
That's why
to
we
see
have
you.
Machon Hara.
No! Oh, you're such an entertaining person.
You got me.
I like it.
You add so much. I just can't imagine a class without Yaakov. It just
I
wouldn't be the same.
Like I said, I make an effort to come to these.
Thank you so much.
He flipped the whole thing with Lashon Hara.
I know it's very good. He's quick.
He flipped the whole thing.
I know he's brilliant. Very good. Good. We should grade them. Okay, people, we're going to talk about 3 scenarios. Who's going to... I think maybe somebody from this room over here is going to read each one of these 3 scenarios. And then we're going to spend just 2 minutes discussing them. And then after that, we're going to hear another scenario from Yaakov. And then we're going to go to some sources. Is that okay with everyone?
All right.
No, because he's got the real one. He's got the...
I'll read though, it's fine.
Oh, thank you.
A patient comes to you as a candidate for open heart surgery. You are the head heart surgeon at your local hospital. You examine the patient and realize that he is too high risk and turn him down. His heart is not healthy and he needs open heart surgery, but his general medical state indicates that he would not survive the operation. How would you explain the situation to him?
Ooh, that's tricky. Anyone have any thoughts?
Is it?
Oh, how are you doing, Avraham?
Is it tricky though?
Oh, obviously not. I thought it was. Turns out it isn't.
I mean, but if he's the head heart surgeon, then obviously, from a medical point of view, he knows better than you do.
No. How does he convey this information to the patient? I mean, does he say to the patient, Charlie, I'm sorry to say, but your situation is not strong enough to survive this surgery? See, the advantage is to tell him the truth. The disadvantage is if you want to give people hope and you want to, give them the strength to push on.
No, tell them the truth. The feelings, don't care about feelings. Tell them how it is.
Tell them how it
cry,
is.
But tell them how it is.
Excellent. Thank you, Ursh. Okay, anyone? Good. Anyone? Any other positions?
Well, for example, saying some kind of emotional upheaval, like what your heart does when you like emotionally.
I didn't go to med school, so
It beats faster. So if you give him this message like in his face, it may give him that last.
Okay, I will go to the head of the surgery of the heart department, the cardiothoracic section of the surgery. And I'll ask him what I should do.
Okay, so for you, it's clear. But okay, that's what were you going to add?
I don't know if I was going to add what he said because I don't know if I 100% agree with his view to begin with. But I would say that if he was to go into an open heart surgery and he would die in the open heart surgery, that it would be best to tell him that you might as well enjoy a month of life that you could still have with your family.
Shalom Aleichem.
Instead, because if a doctor says, okay, I'm giving you 2 weeks or I'm giving you a month, and then
enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
The better path.
Like it says here, if you're gonna have open heart surgery, you're gonna die. So if you came into my hospital and I knew that day I knew that you would die, it's me doing work that honestly is kind of worthless because I've already assessed the situation with the medical records and know that the person won't make it out.
I see. Okay.
I think
You always have to be a little bit careful. And the truth is, we will see a reflection of this as well in some of the halachic sources. You always have to be careful as a doctor or as a healthcare professional. You never know. You never know. You understand? You can only talk about the likelihood or statistically or, this is what's happened in the past. But I think it's very, very, very unhelpful if a doctor speaks with certainty that this is going to happen. Because you don't know what's going to happen. You can speak about what may happen or you can try to explain what can happen, but I think there's a certain caution that you need to have in order to say this may or may not happen?
Well, then it's bad on the doctor's part, because if what you're saying is true, and I am the doctor, and I admit the patient, and he dies in surgery, then he's lost time that he could have been alive with his family.
Machon. You're right. No, sir. You're right. You do have to be careful. But
He took
let's
a
go
risk
to
as the
yeah.
doctor.
I think I honestly did read ahead a little bit to the other ones as well, but I think one overarching theme that I think is really important to think about is what we call informed consent, whereas the patient knows there's full disclosure between the healthcare provider and the client in terms of the risks and the reality of the procedure. This is kind of an open-ended question. It doesn't specifically say whether the surgery is or isn't going to happen, but regardless of that, we're talking about telling the truth, not necessarily about the outcomes of it. It's about patient consent in terms of like they know what they're consenting to in terms of the surgery, all the risks, how the surgery will even happen, assuming they're in a mental state where that can be conveyed to them. I mean, that's like I think the foremost important thing is just informing the person if they're able to receive that information, or obviously to the family as well if that's not the case.
So in that case, you would, and that's certainly
I'm
the
not
way
saying
things.
whether I would or wouldn't do the surgery, but regardless, the healthcare provider would have to provide evidence to the patient or the client about why there are anxieties or uncertainties about the procedure at hand.
Right. It wasn't always like that, but it certainly
absolutely.
But it certainly is like that today. You're quite right.
Totally.
Informed consent. Otherwise,
Informed consent.
they'll sue you, or they'll
absolutely.
Like what Avram was saying.
I have a different opinion. Mine is more into business term, because when it's a local hospital, it can be different type of hospitals are available around the world now. So consent is very important, but there is a verbiage or the kind of written documents that they use. First thing is the hospital, apart from the doctors, there is a management who takes care of all the costs and the profit they're gonna get from the surgery. So in terms of that, I mean, if you think about it, hey, I need my money. We have to spend this much of money, so make a proper way of saying it. We need this surgery done. I need them to pay for that, and then after that, what happens is up to you.
Oh my gosh, that's a very interesting.
I'm being honest. This is what happens in this world, and it's time.
I mean, not in Canada.
Yeah?
Canada, it's just free.
Yeah, there's a different way of saying things. You might say you're telling the truth, but it's not exactly the truth. You are influencing them in such a way that although they knew the truth, they are opting for surgery rather than not doing it.
Right.
And then there's another way of doing things. There are certain hospitals where they're more concerned of the patients rather than the benefits or profit that they get from the patients. So in those scenarios, maybe they might say,
my gosh, what a complicated world we live in.
Don't spend anymore. You have spent enough. So maybe you might opt out because the chances are decent that you know what I mean.
Sure.
No,
you're saying it's like a cold, calculated, economic decision.
It is. No matter, you might say, oh, these are divine people, they're so soft-spoken, but at the end, it's business. They're paying for the doctor, they're paying for every other nurses, and I need to make sure.
We do have a certain luxury, I mean, in all of the topics that we're discussing, and that is, we're sitting in this beautiful Beit Midrash, having a theoretical discussion, which allows us to come up with a perspective, or even to throw ideas that may not be at all relevant or practical. But it's just sort of what would be a. Thank God we're discussing purely theoretically. I think we're going to go to you, Avraham, and then when you're spoken, we might go to Yaakov just to hear some scenarios, and I think and then we'll move on.
Based on number 1, it says his heart is not healthy, needs open heart surgery, but his general medical state indicates that he would not survive the operation. Whereas it says in the other case, in case number 2, it says that the person actually has a 10% survival rate.
Right.
These are two different people.
So the way I look at this is, case number 1, the person's survival rate is 0%. Like there's
correct.
In this person's case, it's not even slim. There's no chance that this person is going to survive this. this. Like, it is like a miracle would have to take place, like Hanukkah, for this person to survive this.
Right.
So, at least from what I've heard from doctors from my not immediate family but extended family, it costs a lot of money to do surgery. Like, this stuff costs a lot of
Yeah,
money.
it's unlikely that they would do it. The question is, how would you say it? How would you convey
like,
it?
when like a person dies, like when a person goes into an open heart surgery or a cancer surgery or something like this, it is really expensive.
Right.
So if you know that the person's going to die and you know how expensive it is to do
That's what,
an
right,
open
very
heart
similar to
surgery.
Asher. There's an economic piece there. I just want to ask Yaakov,
Sure.
our resident healthcare professional, a question.
Go for it.
Is that okay? And then perhaps
Absolutely,
afterwards you
please.
can talk for a few minutes, because you really know stuff. In the second case over
Yes.
here, if somebody's got a 10% chance of surviving an operation, and they decide they're going to do the operation, so as you mentioned when you spoke about full disclosure to a patient, would you speak in terms of numbers, 10%?
No.
Or you would say to a patient, and that would be full disclosure, saying there's a chance, we're going to do our best and we hope it's going to work. You wouldn't speak.
I wouldn't say numbers, because then you're giving the person in some ways misinformation, because you don't know how the sample was collected, like the methods to attain, because each patient is so different. It's like you can take even like huge meta-analysis that may show, like, sure, maybe a 10% chance, but it might not be that particular person in that particular situation with their comorbidities, their life, their age. There's so many other factors that sure there's maybe an average to look at, not to dismiss it. But when you're communicating with a patient one-on-one, you're supposed to treat patients with like there's like 6 principles we talked about. There was like 5 C's or whatever. I don't remember them because they're just very intuitive. But you're supposed to treat them as an individual and not try to use studies. Not again to forget that or dismiss that. But if you're talking to the patient one-on-one about specifically their prospects of surviving an operation or whatever it may be, you can be honest about that. It is a risky operation, that there are serious, there is a potential that this may not work, but to attribute a number from a study which they were not a part of,
Yeah, that's just not relevant.
It's not that it's not relevant. It's just it's not informing them accurately.
Oh, that's so clear. Thank you.
I have a story that is nothing to do with medicine, but it's very relevant, and it's about a Jew, which is wonderful. In 2003,
Clearly relevant.
it is about a Jew. In 2003, the space shuttle Columbia was sent into space. Aboard was a very special piece of cargo. That cargo was a Jew by the name of Ilan Raimon, the first Israeli astronaut. And during launch, a significant number of heat-resistant tiles broke off of the shuttle. So the shuttle was able to make it into orbit okay, but there was like that amount of tiles falling off was unprecedented.
They couldn't get back in.
The engineers, they did an analysis, they did tests, and they ran simulations, and they came to the determination that it was very, very unlikely that they would survive returning to Earth, and they had to make a decision. They realized they couldn't. The Russians couldn't do a rescue operation. They couldn't set up another shuttle in time to do a rescue operation. There was nothing they could do, and they had to decide: do they tell the press? Do they tell the public? Do they tell the families? And in the end, they decided that they wouldn't. They would only say so afterwards, because there was the practical reason of there was an entire mission full of experiments that they had on board that they could still complete, and there was no reason to waste that. As well as, why would you do that to someone? Why would you make someone live with that anxiety of, yeah, so in 8 days you're gonna die?
Mhm,
But
mhm,
why
mhm.
why
I
would you
don't
say
get
that
it.
to
Why
some-
didn't they just put him in like the International Space Station?
Because
Space is
they're
big.
really like it was really small at the time, and there may not have been like they may not
Capability,
have
they had
had the
the capability.
capability.
Yeah, I
of
don't
doing
think
so
they
at the
have
time.
spare
I'm
rooms.
sure they would have.
There may not have altogether. There may not have been space. There may not have been capacity. They realized the rescue was not feasible.
No hospitals
And
in
they ended
space.
they ended up
Not
you know
yet.
they basically they said, listen, there's nothing we can do, so let's not tell them because let's not tell them. We'll just they took the time to come up with press releases and such, and when they returned to Earth, the
Sorry, Moshe,
shuttle-
not tell who? Not tell the press?
not tell anyone. They
The
told no one.
astronauts or the family?
They told no one.
But they were gonna die.
Who? So NASA.
That they were
NASA.
in
There was
danger.
only NASA. It was only NASA executives
Oh, but
and
they
engineers
They
who
didn't tell
knew.
the astronauts.
No,
No.
Okay, now I got it. Okay.
No.
Wow.
because they didn't want to give them anxiety about it, and they still had an entire mission's worth of experiments that they could carry out, and they carried out the experiments. So yeah, they when they returned to Earth, yeah, sure enough, their predictions were correct. The shuttle caught on fire, and all 7 of them passed away. And that was
the
not.
reason that killed them? What was the...
There was the heat resistant
That's
tiles
such
that
an
protect the
interesting
spacecraft
situation.
broke
It's
off
like
during
made of
launch.
titanium alloys.
Oh,
that
so they cooked
came
alive.
To put it bluntly, yes.
Okay. I'm
And
gonna,
that happened, and that was not an isolated event. I mean, in Apollo 13, there were other, that happened a
that's
lot.
Moshe. That is such an excellent example.
It really is.
So
That was, a fascinating
they told the
dilemma.
astronauts what happened with the tiles, but they downplayed the
ramifications.
what the ramifications would have
You
been.
might die now.
Let's turn now. Thank you very much, Moshe. Yaakov.
So again, with full disclosure, Rav actually came up to me when I was sitting and asked me to share like a little example or thing that I experienced when I was in the hospital. I thought I'd give like a tiny 1-minute ramble about background, just so we kind of know at least a little bit what I'm talking about, because I don't know what people's experiences are. Anyways, this is again very generally speaking. There's like 3 types of like psychosis. There's delirious, which means like you have like a UTI or like a thyroid imbalance that usually solves within like a day or 2. I pulled up my old notes because I don't remember this stuff now that I'm studying Torah and everything. Oh, okay, cool. Absolutely. Okay, so the second one, there's no particular order. This is like called like functional psychosis. This is like, for example, like your schizophrenias, your major depressive disorders, your manias. Those people can like functionally exist in reality, and you can like talk to them, but they might think that, for example, the wall is bogged, or they may see different things. But those people you can still talk to, and they have a foundation in reality. But I think the most applicable thing we can talk about is the third category, which is people who have dementia. So people who, they obviously have their dignity, they're obviously need care, but for whatever reason, depending on their severity, they may not necessarily realize where they are, who they are, or what's going on. And I remember there was this one particular lady who, she wasn't able to speak, she wasn't able to talk. She was quite noisy, but she was quite lovely. But she really needed lithium for her. Lithium is a really common medication given for people with bipolar disorders and just a whole bunch of other brain stuff. And it has a very, very narrow therapeutic window, which means like too much of a dose and it could cause a lot of side effects. Too little dose, it causes basically no help to the person. And so as a result, it needs to be given at very consistent times. So imagine you're us on the unit, and I'll tell you the answer of what we did. And let's just say that the person, she rejects all medication attempts that you try to give to her just in pill form and crushed form, whether you put it in applesauce or something. She just rejects it. She rejects her medication and she needs it. I'm obviously paraphrasing in the real life scenario and making it a bit simpler, but what would you do? Would you, in that situation where you need to give the person the medication, she has a prescription, if she doesn't get it, she's going to tank and just go into a much worse state than she already is in, what would you do?
You mentioned the applesauce. Just put it in the applesauce.
She throws the applesauce back at you.
But she doesn't know there's any medicine in it.
She still throws it back at you.
Go with pudding.
I spaced out.
Throws it back at you. Throws it back at
I
you.
spaced out the
If you
second
already
half of that.
can't communicate with her and she's already at that low point of her mental state, then is it really worth talking to somebody who basically doesn't have free will of choice in the matter?
She decides to throw it at you.
Wouldn't you just sedate her and feed her through a tube?
That's
That's.
No, they do that.
I mean, not for people with just dementia. That's like.
Legally,
Is that like a prison thing?
legally,
No.
I
people
don't know if
with
it's.
legally people with mental disorders to a certain degree have guardians because
Mhm.
they.
Let's say she signed all the consent forms that like the guardians allow us to give the medication. Let's say that.
Oh, then it's completely not in her control anymore, and that you can basically just inject her with it.
I mean, yeah.
If it can be injected, right?
I mean,
Any
not all medicines can be injected. Some things you can't even give because they need like extended release. And if you give it too much, it'll just cause like a huge spike in the concentration and side effects.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but if she already signed her consent away, she's already at that low of her mental state, then it seems like that is what you have to do.
Yeah.
That's
Fire
just
up
it.
and
So the tube still applies?
So honestly, what we had to do, and like this is something like I personally like. I just had to. There's like what it says in the textbook, and then what you do in real life, and those are two very different things. So she was a really lovely Italian lady. We would get ice cream from the freezer. We had those little like I don't know, those little cups that you give to kids. Get the medication, mix it into the cup, and give it to her, and say it's ice cream. So every day she'd get her little ice cream, and we have to, well, not necessarily inform her about what was in the ice cream, but that's how she got her medication for ice cream.
Well, that's what I just said. You just
And what does it say in the textbook?
You can't do that. You can never do that.
But isn't the informed in that case via the guardian?
I mean, it is, but then the person still has autonomy and they have feelings and they have
But say the
humanity.
same scenario, same factual scenario, but she has no guardian. In which case you can't then do. There's no consent.
And a lot of the people that end up in like old age homes and in like hospitals, they don't have guardians, and a lot of them they don't have people looking out for them, and like unfortunately, especially because like the reality, like it was a Jewish hospital, a lot of people they were the only survivors of their families, and so there's always a really tricky thing where like I think like in terms of the topic we're talking about and telling the truth to patients, I think like that's so closely tied to like consent, and when especially someone judging whether someone is capable to accept consent or give consent, it's probably like the hardest thing I found with one of the hardest things I found with working in like the healthcare environment is that balance between like you need to give the person their medication versus like they don't want it, they don't do it. It's hard. It's a reality and it happens every day all over, but it is what it is. And it's a little sad.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want a hug, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I appreciate it.
It was hard. Must have been really hard.
It was hard. I can give other stories like.
Is she okay now?
I mean, I hope so.
You find out that
not
all
yet?
we do is that would be impressive.
Oh, do you want another story?
We can.
Do we have time?
I think we'll.
Next time.
Can I take this?
Oh, sure.
little thing from you?
Absolutely.
Thank
I'm
you
not
very
sure.
much. The story was very, very painful.
It is what it is.
My gosh, wow. Yaakov, you're amazing. We are so fortunate to have you in this class.
Mm-hmm.
That was an amazing story. Thank you. I'll add, but there's when you told your story, there's a story, I think it was asked to Rav Osher Weiss. You heard of Rav Osher Weiss? He lives here in Yerushalayim. He was asked, there was a man with dementia, and he had to eat. He had to eat in order to survive. Came to Yom Kippur, and he has to eat. And so they wanted to tell him it's not Yom Kippur today. Because if he knew it was Yom Kippur, he wouldn't eat. So can the doctors tell him, it's okay, it's not Yom Kippur today? And then he can eat. So this man was quite a clever man. He said, I know if it's not Yom Kippur, So then let's both eat together. Isn't that hard?
I like that.
So they asked Rav Osher Weiss, can the son eat with his father in order to save his father's life? Yeah, so he did. You hear that? Isn't that a crazy case? Anyway, okay.
I've heard similar cases of that where people, very religious people, who were told by their doctors, you listen, you can't fast on Yom Kippur. It's just, it could be detrimental. They didn't want to listen to their doctor.
They're breaking halacha.
Well, they didn't want to listen to their doctor. They were being stubborn. Oh, I'll be fine. So what? In some cases, it would have been their spouse. Their spouse cooked, made for them this plate. It said, one of us is going to eat this plate of food. It's either going to be you or it's going to be me.
Oh wow, that's clever. Yafeh Ma'od. Yafeh Ma'od. Okay, people, we're now going to go to a Jewish approach to telling the truth and to lying.
Wait, what about scenario number 3?
We're going to move on. Because I think we want to get through to some halachic discussions. What we're going to do is I think this is really 4 sections. The first section is some psukim on two opposite views of lying in the Torah. After that, we're going to look at some commentaries on these psukim, and then 2 scenarios of when you are allowed to lie. According, really a debate about lying from the Torah, a debate about lying from the Talmud, and then at the end, we're going to look at some how this plays out in medicine. We're going to end with a fascinating book that I think you'll really enjoy. There's a book called Nishmat Avraham. We'll get to that. That'll be our final source for today. Okay, so let's talk about 2 sides on how to view lying in the Torah. So the first story, this is a story you may have heard of already. The story of Sarah Imenu. Sarah Imenu is told that, do you remember at the beginning of Vayera, the 3 angels come and they say that she's going to give birth. Vatitzchak Sarah. When Sarah heard that she was going to give birth, she laughed. Vatitzchak Sarah bekirba. Do you notice that Titzchak, she laughed? He's called Yitzchak. That's Vatitzchak Sarah, she laughed. And she said, Acharei baloti hayta li edni, Acharei baloti hayta li edna, va'adoni zaken. How is it possible that after I'm no longer able to have children, and my husband is old? Adoni zaken. Now, Avraham hears Sarah laughing. And when Avraham hears Sarah laughing, he asks Hashem, why is she laughing? What's going on in there? Vayomer Hashem el Avraham. Lama ze tzachaka Sarah lemor. Why is she laughing? Sorry, Hashem says to Avraham, why is she laughing? Ha'av umnam eled. Will I still give birth? Va'ani zakanti. And because I am so old. Now, she wasn't laughing. We know because the Torah, she was laughing, saying, how is it possible I can give birth when my husband Avram is such an old man? But when Hashem reports it to Avram Avinu, that's not what he says. He says how she's laughing, wondering how can she give birth when she is so old. So Rashi says, Va'ani zakanti shina katuf b'pnei shalom. So the HaKadosh Baruch Hu changed it exactly mipnei shalom, for the sake of peace. Sharei hi amra va'adoni zaken. Now what do you see there? We see there, which is a very, very important thing, that truth is not an absolute value. Because if truth was an absolute value, then God would not have been able to lie to Avram Avinu. But it seems that peace takes precedence over truth. And the truth is, there are so many beautiful stories in the Talmud about peace and truth, like before the world was created, and all these interesting discussions about the tension between peace and truth. We're not going to go into those now because we don't have enough time. But remember that we see that it's not yehareg va'al yavor. There are situations like we see over here, when the truth is not told in order to preserve peace. Yes.
It's like Aaron and Moshe when you think about it. Aaron would bend the truth for peace of the people, and there was this idea that Moshe never really was able to get into the day-to-days of the Jewish people's lives, and he kind of was known for like having a mask and like, you know, being the person who deals with the laws, because to Moses the most important thing was truth and justice, and Aaron was like a master when it came to like interpersonal skills. Like he could literally like bend the truth just to get two people to like have
It's so complicated.
So you said
when Aaron was dead, everything was the period that was said was longer than with Moshe, not?
Yes, very good. We won't go into. You're quite right, Malti. An excellent point. But we're going to.
There's a lot of commentaries on that.
Yeah, we're going to continue that. Excellent point. Okay, that is one side of the argument.
So you said that the reason that peace takes precedent over truth is because it is permissible to lie to keep the peace.
We don't know why. We see that peace. We don't know why, but we see from Rashi on the story that we just told. We see that truth takes precedence. Do you see that? Shina ha-katuv mipnei shalom. That the narrative was changed in order to maintain peace. Huh?
What do you mean we don't know why?
The Rashi just says that it happened. We're not told why. We're not told here why truth is pushed aside for the sake of peace. We just see that is pushed aside. The Rashi doesn't explain why that's the case. It just states the case. Okay.
One is a priority over another.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we see. We see that that peace seems to be a priority over truth, but there's no indication why that would be the case over here. And we can think about it, but Rashi doesn't address that here. Okay. On the other hand, the other side of the argument from Parashat Mishpatim, midvar sheker tirchak. Now, it's a very, very unusual phrase. Midvar sheker tirchak, distance yourself from lies. Sheker, falsehood. Distance yourself from falsehood. That's source number 3. On source number 3, we're going to look at two sources. Sources 4 and source 5. Source 4 is from the Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch is the book of mitzvot. It takes every mitzvah in the Torah and elaborates on the rationale for that particular, the shoresh ha-mitzvah, what's the reason, and some details often of what the mitzvah entails. That is the Sefer HaChinuch, quoted over here in source number 4. So on this mitzvah of midvar sheker tirchak, we're now going to look at the Sefer HaChinuch. This is what he says. Valken, his haratanu haTorah, la'archik min hasheker harbeh. It's not good enough not to do it, but we're told to move far away from sheker. Como shekatuv, midvar sheker tirchak. Finei hizkera bo lashon richuk lerov miuso. It's not good enough just not to do it, but it is so repulsive you have to move far away from it. ומצד הריחוק, הזהרתנו שלא נטה אוזנינו כלל לשום דבר שנחשוב שהוא שקר, in order to distance ourselves from שקר. ואף על פי שאיננו יודעים בוודאי שיהיה אותו דבר שקר, וכאין מה שאמרו זיכרונם לברכה, הרחק מן הכיור ומן הדומה לו. There's certain things that you just have to keep away from them. The law, the danger is so great, it doesn't just say lo l'shaker, which means do not lie. The Torah says midvar sheker tirchak. You know, let's say the Torah says don't kill, right? But it doesn't say keep away from knives. It says don't kill, lo tirtzach. Here it doesn't say lo t'shaker, it says midvar sheker tirchak. This concept of a lie is such a dangerous idea that it's not good enough just not to do it. You have to distance yourself from it. That is what the Sefer HaChinuch is saying. And I might just add in parentheses and tell you that many years ago I was involved in a midrashah where not everybody kept to all of halacha. And once in a while, unfortunately with great pain, really with great pain, you have to like discipline people and tell them what you did here wasn't great, what you did there wasn't great. But you know what their red line was? The one rule. There were girls that would perhaps drink a little bit more than normal, go to bed a bit later than they should do. But there was one red line that if you broke that red line, you got kicked out. And do you know what that is? Lying. Exactly. Because if I lie, if somebody lies to me, then I'm not talking to you. You understand? That's not you. In front of me, I'm like talking to an actor who's making up a story. But now if I want to speak to you, or if you want to speak to me, then it has to be truth. Because if it's not truth, then we're just playing like we're...
Role play.
Yeah, we're just like in a film. You can film it and like send it to Hollywood or something like that. But it's not real. You follow? And that's why if somebody would lie, then there's nothing... we're not talking to each other anymore. You hear that?
So difficult, 'cause the lying would then be under duress.
Huh?
The lying would be under duress. It wouldn't be a lie for the sake of lying. It would be a lie when being confronted with something.
Yes,
The
yeah.
lie follows.
Yeah.
So it's almost a cover of a cover.
Oy.
It's too much to even start with.
Yeah.
If it's a lie for the sake of a lie for the sake of benefit, I stop lie at 3 o'clock when nothing matters.
Yeah.
5 o'clock, the Rav, a Rosh Yeshiva, comes and confronts me, and I'm nervous. I'm under duress. I can't be held accountable necessarily because I'm lying to save myself.
Yeah. You know, as a parent, on that duress business, as a parent, lying is such a dangerous thing. As a parent, or whenever you're speaking to somebody else, you should never ask someone a question that might cause them to lie. So let's say, I don't know, a kid did something wrong. Don't say, did you do that? Because you're prepping them to say, I didn't. You know what I mean? I'm sort of, like, and that's also, let's say in the Midrash, you shouldn't, even if someone did something wrong, I don't know, you shouldn't bring someone into a situation where, like you're lying under duress.
When Sarah lied, and then Hashem said, but you did laugh. And she said, then because I was scared. I'm sorry, Adam.
Yeah.
Much better example. And they said, because we were scared. We were naked.
Yeah. Nachon.
But
exactly. There's a danger, exactly. Lying under duress, meaning that I hate to say terrible things, but if I'm lying under duress, the person who is asking me is also bringing me to that. You have to be very careful in speaking to someone under duress that don't bring them. But this is not really connected to our discussion, but I think it's a very, very important idea that it's not just the liar who's at fault when the lie comes out. Sometimes we bring lies out of other people by asking them questions that are not the right thing at the right. Yeah.
Parents do lie to their children. If a child goes to you and asks where do babies come from, and you don't think they're you don't think they're old enough to know the finer details, you might lie to them.
I don't think you should lie. You just need to.
You say babies come from a shack.
No, don't. That's part of another question. We're not going to talk about parenting there, but I don't think. We're not. This is not a class in parenting, even though parenting is a very, very important concept. But you shouldn't lie.
So, I have an aunt who hates fish so much. She told her kids that they were allergic to fish and they never tried fish. And all of a sudden, when they tried it, one actually did hate it and didn't want it. The other one didn't care much for it.
Okay.
And then when my parents, when I was younger, when I always wanted like specific type of food, my parents say it's not kosher until I figured out it was kosher.
Okay.
So then they're like, I don't know what to do,
so that's
no matter what they say, it's not kosher if it's too expensive.
Okay.
Figure out what the kosher symbol was.
I think the truth is, I think parenting is very important, and it's good that you've all had lots of experiences, and I'm sure you will all, Be'ezrat Hashem, be excellent parents, but we're not going to talk about that now. I just want to add one more point to the Sefer Chinuch. We said midvar sheker tirchak is not good enough. You have to stay far away. I want to add to that from the Sfat Emet. Here, look at this. He quotes from Mori Zikni, his grandfather, Shehigid b'shem, the grandfather was a Chidushei Arim. Shehigid b'shem Harav me Parashischa, Rav Simcha Bunim Parashischa, who, Shelo matinu harchaka, b'shum isur b'Torah, rak chachamim tiknu siyag. Zulat HaSheker, the only thing that the Torah tells us, litrachek mimenu, the only thing that the Torah tells us to distance ourselves from is sheker.
Sheker?
Sheker, lying. HaTorah atzma amra tirchak, larot chomer ha'isur. Komochin masinu kam be'emet. So he said there are two very, very interesting things. He says, I think this is very, very clever. The Torah tells us twice moving. One of them is midvar sheker tirchak. The only thing we're told to distance ourselves from is sheker. And listen to this. The flip side is tzedek tirdof. This is right at the end of the Torah in Parashat Mishpatim, in Parashat Shoftim. Tzedek tirdof, which means pursue righteousness. Isn't that brilliant? So I'm running away from sheker and I'm pursuing righteousness, tzedek, and what the Sfat Emet does is he brings them together. I think this is really linked to the psukim we looked at the beginning, because lying, it's fire, and because it's not clear cut, that's what makes it so dangerous, and that's why I need to run away from it. Because, there are different ways that different people deal with tricky situations, but absolute honesty is not necessary all of the time. Like we see, shalom defeats emet, like we saw in the Rashi before. Because of that, you have to be even more cautious. You follow?
Always defeat emet.
Correct.
Like, the sota, the woman who's been suspected of other mental affairs. That's a case where Shalom Bayit does not supersede him. Correct.
She drinks. You're right. You're quite right. Yeah, it's not. Yes, you don't always pursue Shalom against Emet. Quite right. Yes. Yeah, and that's what you see. I think that's what makes Emet and Sheker so dangerous, because it's such a fire. Emet, Sheker. And it's not. There are, because of those one or two situations, and in the medical scenario, we'll come to more of them in a minute. Bezrat Hashem, that's what makes it such a cautious area. Okay, is that clear? Okay, we've seen the psukim on one side, psukim on the other side, and then the fire that is Emet and Sheker. We're going to go on to the Gemara now, and then after looking at the Gemara on this issue, we're then going to conclude with take it to the doctor scenario. Yes.
It's also a trap, because when you lie, you're digging yourself into a hole. And once you keep lying and lying and lying and lying, you kind of forget
the truth.
Well, you forget what the first lie was that you even came up with. So whenever you lie, you basically have to hold on to that lie, because if you lie to somebody else, they now look at that as being MS. So you have to kind of remember the lie that you've told and keep track of it. Essentially, it's like...
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. Because after a while, you
pay a huge price.
Deep, and then sometimes you don't even remember what the lie was.
Yeah.
But you've affected so many other people
You're absolutely right. There's no such thing as a little lie. Little lies, they grow. Excellent. Yes.
Just to add on to what he's saying, just a little tangent. It's like I watch these criminal psychology videos, these police interrogation stuff, and just to get to the end of it, so I don't take up too much time. It's so hard to lie, as he said, in these interrogations, because what they'll do is they'll jump around to different points of whatever the crime was, and to maintain that lie for 5 hours, 6 hours, when they're bombarding you with questions, using all these tools almost to get you to change your story, lose your alibi, and all this. It's just hard to lie, because even I know in my personal life, I if I've ever said a lie, I have to remember who I said it to, and who knows and who doesn't know, and then it's just you just gotta say the truth, and then you don't have to worry about it.
I know, you're absolutely right. So you could be a
Why it's
truthful
super-
person.
That's why
Talk
it's
to them.
super hard to be a spy.
Like truly, like I.
There was that Sacha Baron
Go
Cohen
on.
film about the Israeli
Yeah.
About
soldier.
Ellie
that-
Cohen. Ellie Cohen.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
we say,
let's.
we say murder and kill. The rule that unless we could distinguish between the two words murder and kill, we sometimes will say the same thing. Do not kill. But if somebody's coming to kill you, you may kill them, right? So
Killing
do
is
not murder.
killing is the physical act.
So I wonder
Yeah.
if when we say sheker, if there's another word to sheker that the Torah has for us, or if because we're limited by our language, where we're saying sheker, what is
Sheker is always bad, you're right.
always bad. But is there another word that we would say for the sake of something where it's okay? It's sort of to the same degree we would say as a rodef of sheker, which is
Yeah, that's a very good, that's an excellent question.
Are we limited by our own language?
Yeah, I'm not sure. As far as I know, there is not a word in Hebrew that would be good enough that I could say this is okay. Meaning, God over here, it wasn't a sheker, it was X.
In the truth.
I don't know, I haven't got that word.
Or also, depending on for who benefits. For example, may I lie for my own benefit, for the group benefit, or only for another person's benefit, the same as if loaning an object to a person.
So let me go to it. In general, whenever you lie for your benefit, it's normally wrong. Because there's no, why would you, it's all, I mean, let's look at the Talmud. Let's go to the Gemara now. The Gemara's famous example of lying, Asher.
Yeah, it just reminded me of the point when you raised it, because Rav Fireman, when he was giving a shiur, he talks about something which really inspired me. What he says was, in this world there's nothing called as which is bad or which is good. It's just when you use that good in a bad way, that becomes bad. Or when you use that bad into good, that bad thing itself becomes something divine. So there's nothing called as good and bad. And he gave an example of Ramvin and Sarah Imenu. Why Hashem has to say, is that a lie? Or was it saying something which for us it seems like a lie, but it's exactly something good to bring Salom by. So it's the way how we stereotype, we perceive things. So likewise, we have been reading Chafetz Chaim. So in Chafetz Chaim, there's a saying that says, if you say a truth about someone, that is Lashon Hara. But if you say, which is not really sure, which might be a lie, that is more sure about it. And if you say something which is true, but you're adding on to it, which is more worse than the previous one. So, and also if you keep on giving around, it's become rechilu. So
Right.
there's certain restrictions. When I figured out, when you say benefits, it says there's a point again. You might say, which might sound Lashon Hara, but you're saying not Lashon Hara for the person, but you're saying for him to change.
That's excellent, excellent.
That thing to
We talk about good and bad
Yeah.
rather than truth and falsehood.
Right.
Maybe we'll talk about it's good. Like if you're looking for your word, talk about, use it in the frame of reference of good. Is it a good statement or a bad statement? As opposed to a factual, yeah. I want to, people, I hate to, I just want to move on, only because I want to look at the Gemara, and then afterwards I want to get to Yaakov's medicine, because I want to justify the title, which was telling the truth to patients. So I just want to get to some patience quickly at the end. Okay, there's a very famous Gemara. It's source number 6. I'll tell you why it's famous. It's famous because it's a song. Whenever the Talmud becomes a song, then it's famous. Does anyone know this song?
If you sing it, I might know it.
Keitzat meraktim lifnei yakala, Keitzat meraktim lifnei yakala, Keitzat, you know the tune, la 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 la, la 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 la, ay la 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 la, oh, ay la la la, ay la la, ay la 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 la. Hi, la 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 la. Okay, good. That woke everyone up. So the Gemara says, Keitzad meragdim lifnei kala. How are you supposed to dance in front of a kala? What happens if it's not everybody? Everyone should be well, but let's say your friend marries someone and she doesn't look wonderful. So what do you say to your friend? So Beis Shammai omrim kala kamotchi. If she looks good, you say your wife looks fantastic. If she doesn't, you say your wife looks awful. That's Beit Shammai. Beit Hillel omrim, no. Kala na'e v'chasuda.
Or just keep it to yourself about a repair.
So why? But you see that? But no. Now, if you just put beyond the sort of like the nourishkeit of this story. But the question is, well, you know what am I supposed to do? Now, if I were to say she looks great, really, I'm saying to him what he needs to hear. What I need to validate my friend, the Chatan, on his wedding day. And what he needs to hear is, for you have chosen, together you have found the perfect partner, one for the other. You understand? That's what they need to hear. Now, in order for me to convey to my friends that you have found the best partner, I will say whatever I need to say in order to strengthen this marriage. You follow? However, according to Beis Shammai, no. It's not about strengthening a marriage. It's saying how things are. You follow? You'll be happy to hear, and that's why it's a song. We paskin like Beis Hillel here. So there you see, is that a sheker? Am I lying? I'm not. Why? Because my goal, I'm strengthening a marriage. Now, as Shua, really, as Shua said at the beginning earlier, you can't say anything to any couple in order to strengthen their marriage. You follow? Like the case of the sota, you deal with it. But in this situation, you have, and that's Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai. We paskin like Beit Hillel. You don't say what you see. You say what needs to be said in order to strengthen the marriage. What do you see? We see again, similar to the case we saw earlier on, that shalom is really a very, very important factor. And sometimes the right thing to do, like what you were saying before, the right thing to do may not necessarily be the factually accurate thing to do. And perhaps the reason why Torah always needs to tell us, like midvar sheker tirchak, is because it's just so difficult to have the wisdom to be able to know when to do what. It's really very complicated because it's not black and white. Okay, with that, we're now going to turn. That was all an introduction to today's share. So now we'll start. Is that okay with everybody? Good. So if we go to source number 8. Oh, this is really Yaakov. Yaakov, this is mamash for you.
Okay.
This is a question. There was a rabbi called Rav Eliezer Valdenberg. Rav Eliezer Valdenberg was a rabbi on the Jerusalem Beit Din. And he died, I think he lived a long life. He served in the 1960s, 1970s, maybe at the beginning of the 1980s, but I think he passed away in the 1990s. Maybe even beyond. Rav Eliezer, of course, don't understand anything anymore. Eliezer Waldenberg, with a W. Waldenberg lived here, and this is a question. He was the rabbi who ruled for Sha'arei Tzedek Hospital.
He died in 2006.
2006.
Yes.
Thank you. So he was active. For the last few years of his life, he wasn't well. He was active in the 70s and 80s, but I'm not sure he was active beyond then. Okay, this is a question that was asked to Rav Eliezer Valdenberg. Ha'im chova liyadeh hamutupal meirosh al achusei hatzlucha numuchim. Are you allowed to tell a patient prior to surgery the chances of how it's going to turn out? How much detail do you need to give when you are informing the patient about the possible treatments and the possible ramifications? To what level of detail do you need to go in order to answer them? So this was a question asked by the doctors in Sha'arei Tzedek Hospital to the rabbi of the hospital. Yaakov, isn't that amazing?
That's incredible.
To have a rabbi of a hospital. Yaakov, I hope Be'ezrat Hashem you have the honor one day of working there, because you'll love it.
We had a chaplain, like a Jewish chaplain, who went around. He wasn't Orthodox, but he did prayers with the patient.
No, but here everything is.
But it's amazing.
This is according to halakha.
This is overarching for the doctors to go to, not just for the patients to go to, right? Correct.
Yeah, exactly. This was a question asked by the doctors, not asked by the patients.
Wow. Okay.
No, this is a hospital that has a sign at the front to say if Cohnim can come and not come in It's a hospital with a large synagogue inside it, where the food is.
A nursing home like that. Not a large synagogue, but a nursing home in Seattle that was similar to like that.
Mm-hmm.
They always had to sign out just in case someone passes away. No Kohanim. And then we know that day there's no Kohanim.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is what he says. מכיוון שמדובר בהיכת לא נשקפת סכנת חיים באי הטיפול בדרך האמורה בשאלה, לכן מבחינת הלכה מחויב הרופא להודיע לנטפל על מידת אחוזי ההצלחה, אפילו כאחוזי אי ההצלחה הם הנמוכים. He says, if there is no danger to life, then you should explain, then you go into all the details. There's no reason to hold back on sharing information. Informed consent, you can go into as much detail as you want about the chances of not success, if there's no danger to life. However, then certainly you need to tell him if the chances of success are low and there's no danger to life, then you need to inform them that the chance of being successful are low and there's no danger to your life. So you can make an informed decision. Now, what happens if there is a danger to life? What do you do if there is a danger to life? So he doesn't address that question, but we're going to come to the approach of Nishmat Avraham. Nishmat Avraham was a doctor. Let me just tell you about this amazing guy. His name is Rabbi Avraham, and he is both a rabbi, a student of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, but he is also a doctor, a head of a department in Shaarei Tzedek Hospital. And he wrote a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch for doctors. Meaning whenever there was a halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, on any area of Jewish law, whenever there was a halacha, it might only be on Orach Chaim, like the Mishnah Berurah, on the first section of the Shulchan Aruch.
Dr. Rav Avraham.
Maybe it's on the whole of it. I think it might be on the whole of it, actually. Yes. Rabbi Dr. Avraham. He would write the doctor's perspective on that particular halacha. Now, if you have a look, you must be on the whole of the Torah. It is on the whole of the full section of the Shulchan Aruch. So we're told in Yored De'ah, in source number 9, if somebody is about to pass away, we tell them politely, it's time to do vidui. If somebody, this is the halakha in the Shulchan Aruch. If you are ever in the presence of somebody who is about to leave this world, it must be such an incredibly powerful moment. At that moment, then you say vidui with that person.
Does the Rav talk about vidui for a moment? Like I know vaguely what's in it, but like why is what is in it?
It comes back to the Shema that we spoke about before. There's really it's Shema and Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim, accepting God in heaven. It's really very similar to the prayers we say right at the end of Yom Kippurim. Hashem Hu HaElokim. You'll find it also in many Sidurim.
No, I know. It's
okay. But the truth is, because we only have a very short amount of time, I'm going to continue and conclude on this issue, on this point of that the Shulchan Aruch says that somebody who's about to leave this world, we tell them it's time to do vidui. So on the final source on the page, the Nishmat Avraham, Rav Avraham, who lives not far from here in Beit Vagan, he says, Lefi ze yotzeh. We quote the Shach who says, Choleh shelo nata lamavet ein omrim lo. He says, if somebody who is not about to die, don't mention vidui. Don't mention vidui. Why? And then he adds an extra sentence. Nirali, it appears to me, shebecholim eila, people who are, death is not imminent for these people. Anyone for whom death is not imminent, they may be a terminal patient, but death is not imminent. Somebody, if chas lo aleinu, somebody chas v'sholom has suffering with cancer or a heart condition, ein tam legalot lahem kol hamachshavot vayeda shel harofeh. He says there's no need to share with the patient all of your thoughts and deliberations, because it won't help. It doesn't help. He says why? Ki hadavar lo yavi kol to'elet lacholeh, the only thing that it could cause is Yeush. Yeush is the last thing you want to cause a patient is to give up hope. He says the job of the doctor is to preserve life. You follow? And to avoid Yeush. Yeush is to give up hope. And therefore he says any information that you share with a patient who's not about to die, that's all, like anyone who is, you could be terminal, but nothing is imminent. Any shared information that could lead to Yeush is unnecessary. And therefore you shouldn't share it with a patient. And then he says, V'chadam it appears to me, Sha'chen kach linhog. I believe that this is the correct way to do it. Now he's writing both with the hat of a rabbi and also as a doctor. And really I think his chidush, not his chidush, but really the point that he's trying to say is that our role, he's saying as a physician, is to help preserve life. So therefore any information, anything that could help preserve life goes back to what we were talking about shalom before. And then the way you sort of formulated it, anything that will preserve the life of the patient is good. It's good. It may not be accurate, but it's good. We're not talking about someone who is imminently chas v'shalom about to pass away, but anything that can maintain hope is good. And therefore, that's the right thing to do. You follow? You're not making stuff up. I mean, you don't make stuff up, but you don't need to share all the information, because sharing all the information can lead to helplessness, and that's certainly not good. You hear that? Marta Choshev? Do you have any thoughts on that, Yaakov?
Honestly, on that last point, it's a how do you say this word again?
Yeush.
That happens, especially with an older population, all the time, because you have to realize that like the reality is like when people age, they notice it. Maybe they don't notice it right away, but they definitely realize that the end is approaching. And it's very, very easy for a person to fall into a hole of darkness, even considering, like if they're in a home, like these homes are not the most pleasant of places. Honestly, chas v'shalom, I hope nobody ends up in them, but that's a separate topic altogether. But part of, I think, of healthcare professionals' duties is, when possible, to brighten up someone's day and avoid hopelessness, because once someone falls into hopelessness, their chances of getting an infection or just anything is it's incredible how quickly people can fall off. Like, people will be smiling one week and then next week, well, they're not smiling at all.
I know
that's excellent.
And it's incredible just how just the smallest hello, how are you, and just giving even a hug, or just giving someone just a minute of time, because people, especially in healthcare, it's everyone's busy. I had 30 patients to look after. If you round that out to the 8 hours that I was on shift, I could give someone maybe 20 minutes of my time. Half the time, obviously, I'm busy. So maybe you have 5 minutes of contact per person, if that person is lucky.
And you're saying it's not just pleasant, there's a medical benefit, because you said to avoid infection.
Absolutely, yeah. No,
that's amazing. Isn't that amazing?
People's mental well-being has has huge impact on just their overall body health. And so really maximizing that time where you can help the person, and it just be through just having conversation, because these people, especially during lockdowns and Corona and everything, they weren't allowed to leave the premises. They were just trapped almost.
Yeah. So there's medical danger from, right?
Yes, the truth is, he writes it here, and you're corroborating it from your experience. People, I want to summarize, bring our discussion to an end. It was really quite an exciting journey today. Thank you all very, very much for your contributions and your insights. But we looked at dilemmas, your dilemmas. We looked at sort of in psukim, looking in the Torah itself, where there's sections where we see a lie, and then on the other hand, we're told to distance ourselves from lies, and we spoke about that tension, and we spoke about the how you have on the one hand midvar sheker tirchak. The only time we're told to keep away is from lying, as opposed to tzedek, pursuing goodness, tzedek tirdof. Then we looked at the Gemara that spoke about the dancing with a chatan and with a kala. My goal is good. I want to support this marriage. And the truth is, we're not always at a wedding supporting marriages, but we are often in interpersonal relationships where you want to strengthen a relationship. And this debate between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai is a very important one with many ramifications. And then at the end, we turned to the medical sort of side of things. And this final piece from the Nishmat Avraham speaks about Yeush and what you have to say about Yeush too, that the goal of everybody who's caring for somebody towards the end of a life is to avoid Yeush. And anything you can do to avoid Yeush, I mean, not anything you can do, but it's important not to share any information that could lead to Yeush. If there's information that could lead to Yeush on someone who's not about to move on into the next world, then you'd want to avoid it. It's not a very jolly topic, but it was a very interesting topic. Yashar Koach to all of you. Next week, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to talk about using the secular calendar. Are you allowed to?
Same torch.
Looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Yashar Koach to you.